Is my phone on silent?
Well, welcome to the Deep Cut Chiefs podcast in our inaugural launch of this, whatever we're calling it, Kyle. What are we doing here?
We are performing a great public service by speaking just our truth, really, to everybody.
Yeah, I like it. There's some claps for our speaking truth to everyone. So, yeah, so this is going to be our Get to Know You podcast, our Get to Know You episode, I should say. Because, we think it's important for you to understand why we want to do this, and what we plan to cover. So, how would you say this podcast was born? Like, how did we come to that? We wanted to do this.
So Josh and I were stationed together. Both of us are former chiefs. Josh is much more fancier Air Force Chief Master Sergeant than I was. I was just a dirty maintenance chief. But we were stationed together at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, shout out DM, and we spent I don't even know how many weekends on the dusty slopes of the Santa Rita Mountains and just crushing Sabino Canyon, and we did our best to solve the world's problems. I think we're trying to relive the glory days. Also, I think we're super smart, so why wouldn't we?
Fact. Hashtag fact. At least my 12-year-old son thinks that.
Yeah, lit. My son says lit.
Lit? Is that a thing today?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure lit is a thing anymore. I think he cringes when I say, "Ooh, that's lit." So.
Oh yeah. So you're so 3 months ago.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. So me and Kyle have been bros for a while. We met probably 11, 12 years ago. Which is a story we might get into on this podcast. Maybe not this episode, but we'll definitely get into it. So when I think about what, like, Deep Cut Chiefs, what we really want to get through is, we'll get into our stories a little bit here, but I was a command chief up there at Allison Air Force Base, and it just seemed like the airmen always wanted to know what was the down and dirty, like what was the real. Not any of this like Air Force posh, like you got to follow the letter of, hey, the Air Force is telling us to do this, so I need to say it. And what I mean by that is I remember when the EPR system changed under Chief Cody, and it was kind of, a hot mess at some points, and we didn't really quite understand it. But as chiefs, we kind of had to back it up because it was the system we were going under, right? Like,
yeah, true story.
So it was kind of like, how do you navigate those waters when you don't agree with something? But it's the policy, it's the company line, and those are the conversations, not just in the Air Force, that everyone wants to have, because we are all way smarter than most of the management and leadership techniques give us credit for. And so we see holes in all these things, and when we ask, when smart young people ask good questions and you don't have an answer for it, where do you go? And so me and Kyle, we've both navigated these waters in many different industries, and so we'd like to bring that to you. But I will say, just on a personal note, like, my favorite thing about this is that I get to hang out with my bro. We've been friends for a while. One of the reasons when I retired and moved to Houston was to be closer to Kyle and his family. And, I love his family. I love him. And so this is a way for us to get to hang out. So as we kind of move forward, that's kind of the path I want to go on. I want it to be value added for people, but in the end, I just really want to have a good time with you, man. So
yeah, samesies, for sure. I'm actually repping Texas tonight with my
Oh, Bucees.
don't say Bucees. On TikTok, those poor Californians, they call it Bucees, and I just want to reach through my phone.
Okay, well then let's just take a hot take right now. So I'll probably be calling out my wife here in a second, but she wanted to go to Buc-ee's for Mother's Day. because she loved it. And I don't quite understand it. So I'm not a Texas guy. Can you explain Buc-ee's to me? More importantly, to our listeners, it's like a Walmart that has a gas station, which are all around. So I don't quite understand it.
I would say slightly fancier than a Walmart, but it is essentially a big retail store attached to just an enormous gas station. Hundreds of pumps. When you go into the restrooms, which is what they're famous for, always super clean, but there's, 47 urinals, 206 toilets. Just sinks everywhere. It's a madhouse in there. It's like, it's like IKEA. There's just stuff everywhere, to use. Buc-ee's is dope for like a ton of reasons. Like the beaver nuggets. I mean, I could do this all day. Everybody loves beaver nuggets.
I will say that they're, I'll let you get back to it, but their billboard that I passed by on my way to work, it says "Pee like a rock star."
Oh yeah.
And I will say that, like, whenever I go into their restroom, like, I don't feel icky. I will agree with you there.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm gonna go to the bathroom and I'm on the road, I'll hold it to go to Buc-ee's. #quality. Quality toilets.
Yeah, great. Well, so that was a little divergent. Maybe let's turn to. So we are Chiefs. I mean, that's the. I don't even. Are we allowed to say we're Chiefs anymore?
I always say.
I think so.
I say former Chief typically.
Former Chief. Okay.
I retired in 2018, so there are days that I completely forget that I had this chapter, this wonderful 3-year, 36-month service commitment chapter of a Chief Master Sergeant. Absolutely, it was awesome. But sometimes I just totally forget that. When someone's like Chief, or I get an email from a friend, or a Facebook message or whatever it might be, and they're like, Chief, what do you think about X? I'm like, oh my God, I was a Chief. I forgot that I did stuff. Because I'm really retired now. I'm lazy. I hang out with my dog and I go sailing. So Josh is still a part of the working class.
Well, that's not true. Didn't you just you picked up a new job here?
Oh yeah. So I did accept a position over at the airport here in Houston, the baby airport, hobby airport, and I'm going to be doing like environmental health and safety management, something where I can write emails and put cool quotes in my signature line. You know what I mean? Keep that Air Force tradition. VR, Kyle Baker.
And then, VR. I have that on my emails. It says VR. I get asked all the time in the civilian world, like, what's VR mean? But hey, real quick, a hot take, because Kyle called it out. He said that 36-month service commitment when you put on Chief. Don't forget, all you new Chiefs out there, when you make Chief, you start PCSing as a Chief, but you could be a Senior Master Sergeant. That 36 months does not start until you sew on. Yeah. So just be prepared to be in, like for me, I went a little farther. I went a little longer than Kyle did, but the service commitment ended up being about 46 months or something like that. So yeah. So no one told me that when I went over to MPF and signed that dotted line. So yeah, that's just a hot take.
That was a surprise. I found out that I made Chief when I was in Kunsan. So, and Josh came over to Kunsan right after he had been selected for Chief. He came over from the Senior NCO Academy, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. So we actually get to spend some time at my last 2 assignments together, having met each other way earlier in life, way earlier, Senior NCO Academy. But let's see. Yeah. So I wasn't, but I put on at 19 years, 361 days. Or I know I was selected at that, and then I ended up putting it on at that. So
at 20, yeah. Yep.
Right at 20.
Because I remember when we got to DM, and I had been there about a year, and you pull up. I'm like, hey man, so what's the plan for you? He's like, well, I got about a couple more years, and then I'm gonna go out and get that cheddar.
Little did I know that that's just not what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So why don't we start off with like I mean, obviously the audience is going to be geared towards airmen,
for sure.
and people that have been associated with the Air Force. Maybe we can just give a little background on each other, or to tell a little bit about like how you came up. I will say this: would it be possible for you to tell us why you entered the Air Force? Because I love this story. I share this story outside of you all the time because it's so funny. What not asking the right questions will do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated high school here in Houston in '95, and I promptly went to 13th grade, which is San Jacinto Community College. Everybody calls it 13th grade down here. And so I was going to be a college man. I was stoked. I was always really good in English and writing. And so I'd taken an English class, and we were reading Machiavelli something. I don't really remember it all now. I can't even spell Machiavelli now. But so I'd done my report and I'd turned it in, and then like a week later, the professor hands it back, and I'm in class. I've been sitting in class for like a grand total of like 6 minutes. I get the paper on my desk. It's got a big 7-0 circled and an F written right next to it. And I was like, what? After I'd put my heart and soul into reading this junk that I did not care about when I was 18 years old. So at that moment, I did not spend another 20 seconds in that chair. I stood up, I put that paper in my backpack, and I walked across the street and to the Air Force recruiter's office. And I was like, yo, sign me up. And he's like, yeah, okay. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I can fix airplanes. He's like, oh, we got a spot for you, son. And so I got all the stuff done, and that was like September 26th. And October 4th, I was at Lackland. And I mean, it was such a quick spur of the moment decision for me. I just did it and ran off. And
well, I mean, I don't blame you. Like you were told that you weren't capable.
Yep, it made me sad. So I took my balls home, and I stopped playing the game. But anyway, after basic, I went to Wichita Falls to Shepherd to Crew Chief Academy, #362 Crew Dogs. And let's see, I was close enough to drive home over the Christmas holidays. So I was there over Christmas, and one of my buddies had a car. I ended up getting a ride down to Houston, and I'm sitting there a couple days later with my dad. It's December in Houston. It's gorgeous out, and we're sitting on the couch and having a beverage, and he's like, hey, tell me about what happened at San Jac. And I was like, I got an F, and I was like, I'm out. And he was like, did you ever happen to look at that paper that you talked about? And I was like, yeah, I saw the paper. It was 70 was an F. And he had my backpack, my little purple
JanSport?
Why it was a JanSport. I'm so embarrassed that it was purple now that I think about it. And he pulls out the paper, and I just kind of like wadded it in there. And he was like, take a look at this. And I looked at it again, 70 circled F. And I was like, yeah, this is BS. He was like, flip through it. So I'm flipping through it, and there's first page clean, no red marks. Second page clean, no red marks. Third page clean. And like the fourth page had like handwritten this janky bibliography, and even that wasn't red marked up. And I was like, that's weird. And he said, turn it over. So I turned it over. On the back side of this paper, it said -30. You're in college now. You have to type your papers, because I had handwritten it. And so my dad, I know he just wants to say, you are so dumb, but he doesn't, because he's proud, because we're our proud Air Force family. And but holy cow, yeah, I left college on a technicality and had just put myself through boot camp, and dang, I'm getting chewed out for safety wiring wrong at tech school. So it was the best of times.
100. That's how good the paper was. You got 100. You got -30 for not typing it.
This ain't high school anymore, homie. Oh, it was so embarrassing. And my dad just thought it was hilarious. He still thinks it's funny.
Well, it turned out all right.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. Yeah, ended up working just fine. So I did 23 years in the Air Force. After behind that, me not doing my due diligence, flipping over that term paper. But yeah, it was totally worth it for me. I really enjoyed my time in the Air Force.
Yeah, can you maybe give us just a 2-minute? We'll people out there, we'll get into our careers and everything like that as we go throughout this. So we don't want to spend the whole time, but just maybe give a background on, after tech school and all that kind of stuff.
So I just mentioned I was in 23 years. I went to 10. I had 10 different assignments. So I went Luke, Kunsan, Logis, Cannon, Kunsan, Masawa, Davis-Monthan, Homestead, Kunsan, Part 3 to complete the trilogy. Back to Davis-Monthan, and then I retired. I was the 80th Fighter Squadron, or 80th AMU now, I guess. Hashtag crush them. If there's any Juvats listening.
Yeah. So me and Kyle, we were both at Kunsan, I think at the same time. We didn't know each other the first time we were there. But we did hook up our second time there, and then DM after that, and then we just saw each other again at the Senior NCO Academy. And I shared that story. I was his MC. No, I was the guest speaker. What was I at your retirement ceremony? I don't even know. You
were the guest speaker. So how the officer typically provides a speech, you were the guest speaker.
Yeah, you didn't want any of that nonsense.
I didn't have an O in my AMU there for the longest.
Was it Captain Connolly? Hashtag name drop, but who retired you?
Yeah, Captain Connolly. He was in the MOF.
That's right.
I want to say he went to Vegas but like maybe North Vegas, way North Vegas. So I don't know all the deets.
Yeah. So I'll just drop a few minutes of how my career went. My dad, God bless him, when my mom was 2, she's like, I don't want none of this boy. And she left. She rolled out. And my dad took me. Yeah, she said, peace. And so this is the late 70s, early 80s, 90s. He took care of me. He raised me, but we were poor. I mean, sleeping in cars sometimes, and just food security was a thing. House, making sure we had a house was a thing. I was a latchkey kid at age like 5. I remember when when I think of my 5-year, my son's 12 now, but when I think of a 5-year-old leaving them at home, I can't even understand it. Just a different time. I remember him telling me to, hey, son, you have to stay home over the summer. Everyone out here is trying to kill you.
Oh, man, where were y'all?
Outside, what's that?
Where were y'all?
Reno, Nevada. That's where I was born. And I know what he was doing now as a father. He was scared to leave me at home, and he didn't want me getting out, right? So he made it like there was just a murderer waiting right outside our door to slice my throat if I stepped outside. And I kind of make fun of that, but it's just we were poor. And I will say this, my dad was definitely not perfect, but I do know that he loved me. And so that covers a lot of things. And so he had told me he was in the Air Force when he was younger. He was 40 before I was born. And so, like, his whole dream of me was to just join the Air Force. And, the roof over the head, the 3 meals, like, that's all I needed. If I can get this boy to the Air Force. So at 17 years old, he drives me to the recruiter. I didn't really have any say in it. I guess I did. I tried to back out at the last minute. And he's like, nope, you're going in. I signed you in. You're going. And, it turned out great. It was a great move for me. It helped me grow up, and So I went into the Air Force. I got put into egress, ejection seats, and that was I had a good time there. I moved around to about 7. Well, no, when I was done, it was probably 11 duty stations. I moved up from egress to I taught egress for a while at an FTD. Then I moved up to Eielson the first time to be a section chief and a pro super on the MXS side. Then I went and taught at the Air Force Senior Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. I made chief out of there. Went back to Kunsam with Kyle. I was the Dragon Chief. Smoke them if we got any dragons on the line. And then I got picked up or moved to DM, became a group chief, then moved on to a command chief, and then I finished my job up as the enlisted force, the chief of enlisted force development at the Pentagon, working in the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force's team up there. So that was a little bit of my career. I had a blast. I made a lot of mistakes, and again, that's what I think of this podcast is going to be all about. This deep cut chief is trying to maybe help people navigate a little bit of the crazy messiness that is the human existence. I was actually listening to the Armchair podcast because as we try to put this on, I was like, let me get more into podcasts, and so I've been listening to it. And Dax Shepard, I recommend this. It's funny as I listen to actors, like they study human behavior. So I don't know why I thought they wouldn't know a little bit, but man, it blows me away. Plus, I think all of them are in therapy. Yeah, so like they have a lot of tricks up their sleeves, and he was talking about it with his wife Kristen Bell about how messy the human existence is, and how it's hard. It is hard to navigate these waters, and but it's much easier when you have people in your corner, and that's what I actually hope to be. I hope to be in the corner of anyone who's listening. Once we get this up and running, we'll start taking comments and chats and stuff like that, and we'll dive into that a little bit, applying some of our experiences. Because we've been all over the world and seen a lot of things. So.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, nice flex with the whole Pentagon thing. You kind of just glossed over that. Is Kristen Bell on that podcast with him?
No, but I think she's been interviewed a few times. Okay. It was their very first podcast was them together, and he even says it in the beginning. He has this little drop where he's like, "We were fighting right before this podcast started," and I debated whether or not to share this one, but I did anyways, and so I thought that was a strong flex. Like, cool, this is real.
Yeah, and, for sure.
I didn't pick up as strong of notes as fighting as maybe he did, but yeah, you could tell there was a little tension.
Oh, yeah. I like how you listening to something smart where they're studying the human existence, and I'm listening to This Is Important with the guys from Workaholics, and that's like my podcast. That's what I'm taking in right now.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of This Is Important?
It's epic, honestly. If you like the show, and you like those characters, I don't even think those dudes were acting in Workaholics. I feel like it was just those four dudes. Because it's not changed at all. I mean, it's all the same. But pretty
I watched the Adam Devine stand-up special on Netflix, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a 30-year-old man that made millions, writing jokes about buttholes and drugs," and so he knows where he's at. But I've listened to that podcast too. It's actually interesting how tuned in they are, because it was funny. So. It was funny because I was talking to Joyce about this today, actually. By the way, Wordle is the thing in our life right now. We have a text group between our family on who gets the Wordle in the least amount of tries, and so far none of us have missed in like 14 or 15. Well, no, Joyce missed. Ooh. Called her out. She missed one time, so her streak was broken. And then Brooke and Jay, some friends of ours. Kyle knows them. They came out and we introduced them to Wordle, and now we're on a text chain with them. And it's a flex. It's a flex to send that today. This podcast will come out later, but the word was humor, and I got it in 2 because my first word was house, and I was able to figure out. I had the H-O and the U, and I was just able to figure it out. And I flexed on everyone with a 2. Do you play Wordle at all?
I think I'm still doing words with friends through the Facebook Messenger, like the oldest way you can possibly do it. There's like 16 people waiting on me to play back. So no, I haven't played Wordle. I want to play Wordle. Man, but you sound like you're pretty maxed out there. We got like 3 different text chains.
Yeah, it's all right. You know, you wake up in the morning, takes about 5 or 10 minutes, get your brain going. I've heard some people do like Sudoku. How do you say that word?
Something like that.
Yeah. And
I'm a crew chief.
That's some way to flex the muscles instead of
All right.
going into face crack. And I don't want to get sued, so I used a different word. We don't know the liability on this. So
Yeah, just bleep me.
if you're listening to this and we offend you, we're terribly sorry. But
For sure.
allegedly, we're terribly sorry.
Yeah,
because we're not
our
admitting
bad.
any liability. So I was going somewhere before I went with Wordle. Do you remember?
It's something about... No, I don't remember.
Maybe it'll come back to me.
All right. And scene. No, you nailed it.
Dead air. Dead air. That reminds me, have you listened to the Always Sunny podcast?
Yeah, I love I love the Sunny podcast. I listen to it all the time.
Yeah, those guys, it's amazing to me too. Like I know actors are super intelligent, but when they start talking off the cuff, like, it's amazing how observant of the world they are. And that's actually what I was thinking about with This Is Important, the comedians. Like, comedians are always watching because they're always trying to build material, right?
Yeah, so I mean, think about who's like really hot in social media at any given moment. It's it's Dave Chappelle, it's Bill Burr, Joe Rogan used to be a comedian, probably still is a comedian. I just don't know it. I just don't listen to his stand up. But I mean, all those guys are they're big, and they're always on social media, and they're raking it in, and they're comedians, because I think they kind of view the world through a different lens, trying to see the funny or the weirdness.
Yeah, actually, I deal with a lot. I didn't tell people what I did. Actually, I work at Rice University as a talent and performance development specialist. When I got out of the Air Force, I interviewed with them and I got hired. And so trying to figure out how to upgrade the staff and faculty at Rice University, which is a phenomenal institution, and I'm super excited to be there. But I was talking with a leadership group the other day, and I was actually using comedians as kind of, so this could be a deep cut here, maybe not. I'll let the audience decide. But comedians, their growth rate is exponentially faster than ours. And when I said that to someone was like, "What do you mean?" Well, comedians are writing jokes all the time, right? They're just putting it down, and they have no idea if that joke's going to land until they say it. And then they say it, and maybe they get a few laughs, maybe they get a bunch of laughs, and then they have to figure out, was it my delivery, or does the joke just suck? But what I like about it is they get instant feedback. Immediately, what comes out of their mouth is tossed to the curb, and they develop this kind of thick skin. And so for anyone listening, as you try to work on leadership development, how fast are you upgrading? And that's what I was kind of dialing in with the comedians. When you make decisions, when you do things in your organizations, how fast are you getting the feedback? Because decision making is, a lot of people like to, these great decision makers in this world. Well, decision making is just a hypothesis. I think this is what's going to happen, so we're going to move this way. But I think what truly, the comedians, what truly separates good and mediocre from the best is they see the signals faster, and they're able to iterate a whole lot faster than anyone else.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for 3 months for information to come back, in 2 weeks, they know if that decision is moving in the right direction or if they need to adjust. And so I think we can learn a lot from how comedians do it, because no flex here, but I read the book by David Epstein, Range, I think it was, and he was talking about how, and I'll kick this over to you here, but how like sports is a feedback-rich environment, and that's why people in sports can upgrade so much faster than people in business. So I'll kick this to you. So how do you turn your organization into this kind of feedback-rich environment instead of this wicked environment where you might get a little feedback, you might not?
Right. I think that and this is almost cliche, at least it used to be in the Air Force, when people would say you need to fight for feedback. So I feel like that is...
I remember that line in the PDG.
Yeah, I mean, fight for feedback, right? So I passed a couple of those dang tests, but it was one of those... It's such a true thing, and specifically with regards to like communication, right? But I think that I liked your thought about where you were going with how quick you can change after you see if something's going wrong or right. And copy y'all on comedians. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Also on the sports field, I can see how that's true. But, there's a lot of careers in the Air Force that are based on, hey, how fast did we do this? What would we get right here? What did we get wrong? Maintenance being obvious and easy for one, there's a stat for everything. And I know in other career fields there are stats for everything. But instead of like chasing stats and trying to interpret those in the way that best kind of like make you look good, what if you were like actually using those stats and like making that quick feedback loop and saying, hey, if we would have just pivoted here, we could have done good. We could have done so much better, but we didn't recognize it until here. So I don't know. I think it's
what do you think
thing.
stops people from iterating or even just adjusting to the stats?
So I think that, and we're kind of getting into it for the old pilot episode, but I think that a lot of people are nervous to make a call, and because of their either inaction or they're just kind of comfortable with the way it's going, that maybe we don't make that move just yet. Maybe we don't do this, or maybe we don't do that, and they end up costing themselves, time and effort, at the expense of manpower. To a lesser degree, I mean, since I've been out and been exposed to business, the first thing that people care about is time and money. Not as many people deal with money in the Air Force, but you are absolutely kind of like, manpower and wasted time. So I think those are like two like huge resources that get just smoked all the time.
I think you hit right on, especially when you were talking about like people are just scared to make a call, right?
Oh, yeah.
Inaction, it's it's hard. If I don't make a call, it's harder to yell at me than if I make a call and it's wrong. And see, I think that's where I think the problem is that we define it right and wrong, where decision making is a hypothesis where you make a call and then you get to work on it. And if it's not working, then you adjust, right? It's not this binary kind of zeros and ones. I share this story all the time. I was sharing it today. I do a lot of leadership stuff, and they were talking about this exact thing. I mean, basically, not to nerd out on anyone, the psychological safety of an organization is what we're really talking about here. But
I actually knew that.
I know you did. You're much smarter than I am. So, because you have a way with words. If only you typed them.
Oh man, if only.
Yeah. Hashtag callback. So I was talking about Paul Graham. I heard this story one time. He was he ran the Y Combinator out of in Silicon Valley that produced the startups like Uber, Airbnb, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's got a lot of good takes. But they asked some interview asked like, hey, so what's the common denominator in all these great leadership styles or these great companies that came out? And it wasn't what I thought it'd be, like able to paint a vision and get everyone on board, make everyone feel good. Oh, we have purpose, we have meaning. He said what he noticed is the most successful companies iterate faster. They're able to change their direction faster than the other companies. And then I read another story a few years later that was kind of capturing this, that startups that lasted 5 years iterated 50% more than the companies that didn't make it. So it was their ability to adjust, like in sports or like a comedian or whatever. It was their ability to adjust to the changing world. And so I really didn't think we were going to get into deep leadership stuff, but how do you build the organization that is ready for that?
Yeah, no. First of all, Epic. I think you push that down as low as low organizationally as humanly possible, and let the guys, there's hundreds of airmen. You know what I mean? There's
let them take the fall if it all jacks up, right?
No. What I'm saying is they're the ones that see it first, and by the time that it gets up to their section chief or to their senior, to their chief or to their officer, it's the time for change was when that dude or dudette saw it, a week ago.
Yeah, right. Now the world has moved on a week before, so information has changed, the factors, the conditions have all changed. COVID is a really good example of, how fast are you able to iterate? I love this when we get to talking about this, like the BC before COVID, and then a lot of people are going AC after COVID. And in reality, there is no after COVID.
Yeah.
The world has changed. The world has moved on. There's a ton more problems. A lot of things have shifted, and I think it was pretty evident in just even in people's lives. The people that were able to iterate and change faster, to adjust to the world, they were more successful. Whether it be in personal pursuits, health, whatever it is, and professional pursuits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the companies that did well outside of that were definitely those companies that, figured it out quick, came to Zoom, came to these, this computer-based environment and kind of like made it happen.
Yeah.
Tougher to do in the military. Tougher to do for the dudes in the military, but still.
Yeah, but I mean, you bring up a good point, because hierarchy, like I think it's probably think a lot of people think that the flatter the organization, the faster it can move, maybe the way more communication happens and those kind of things, and that is a drawback in the military, right? Like, I mean, we have a hierarchy in place, but be honest with you, you deployed multiple times. I've deployed multiple times on the battlefield. Like, I mean, hierarchy was a thing, but it was more about competence than who the chief was or who the colonel was. Like, I didn't see a lot of, like rejecting of orders or rejecting of anything when it was super serious. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Competency for me is, not even on the battlefield or deployed or TDY or wherever you might be. Competence is such that's it for me. That's if you were competent, chances are you are well loved in your organization, and you are honestly, you're probably just the prized asset. Those guys who could just make it happen, and whether it be A1C who saw something wrong and fixed it on the spot and just said, hey, yeah, I did this. I want that dude way more than than someone who just sits on it for a couple of weeks, or someone who's like, it's been like that for like 6 years. I don't GAF, so that's kind of it.
Yeah, I agree. The people that are not necessarily fighting the status quo, but aren't comfortable with the way, just doing it the way we've always done it, kind of thing, that I do think this new world causes for more people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, not having the answers. Because, for the younger supervisor listening out there, like, competence is hard to prove, especially when you're new to a position, or but I think one of the great things that leaders can learn from today is that you don't necessarily have to walk in the room and be the smartest person in the room, because the answer is probably in the room. Do you have the social, the communication, the emotional intelligence to get the answer out of that room? Can you cultivate an environment where people are putting their things out on the table so that it I didn't mean it like that.
Phrasing.
Yeah, phrasing. Hashtag if you thought bad thoughts, then you're an evil person.
Yeah.
But can you cultivate the environment where people are putting their ideas and their thoughts out on the table so that everyone can kind of see what's going on, get better situational awareness, and probably gather a better decision moving forward? I think that's what leaders today, you don't necessarily have to be the most competent in, am I the, we'll go to the security forces, am I the best shot, or, maintainer, can I don't know, install the engine the fastest? Can you get your team to do it? I mean, I think that's what the leader is, the heart and soul of the leader. Can you create something that's larger than the sum of its parts?
Yeah. Word. For an opening podcast, and we're just going to be light and talk about how I'm dumb and couldn't get through my first paper in college. We've hit some solid leadership, some pivoting. Like, this is stuff we got to come back to, because you could do a whole thing on just, hey, why can't I move? Why can't I do this? Why can't we do any better ever? And a lot of it comes down to what we talked about.
Yeah, the last thing I'll leave on leadership, and I say this to all the leadership huddles that I run and everything like that. Leadership is harder than you think. And I get very nervous when people come into me and say, leadership is just this. It's so easy. All you're telling me is you don't know anything, because it is so much more nuanced than that. And so I think that's kind of what this podcast is going to dive into. It is much harder than people think it is. And so when you're better with words than I am, but when you kind of shrink it down to something as a soundbite or as a tagline on your email or something like that, I think you do it a disservice, because it is much harder than you think. I used to run this kind of little thing where, like, so this is leadership, right? An airman comes up to you and tells you a problem. Not only do you have to think of your one-on-one relationship, you have to think about what's going on in that airman's life, what's going on in my life, what's going on our team, like where are we at right now, what's going on in the organization, what's going on in the Air Force, what's going on in the air, the world. Like, all of those things have had an impact on what's going on right now. And can you decipher all of that information to make good decisions? It's much harder than we think it is. And so I would like to we don't have to leave. We can leave the leadership talk on that, but that's what I think this podcast is all about, personally.
Yeah, and then you boil all that down, you put it in quotation marks, and you put it under your email signature, and your email's at work. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Soundbite.
That's right.
Soundbite.
Tomorrow I'm adding leadership is harder than you think as my everyone sucks at leadership. Just get used to it.
Yeah. I like this is leadership. Like, this is leadership, It ain't always easy.
Yeah, and there is no prescriptive, right? Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. Is that appropriate anymore? Can I say that? I don't know.
Maybe don't kill a cat, but skin a cat. You probably do that.
All right, let's dive into this. Can you skin a cat and not kill it?
I don't know. I mean, if you had some some medical facilities, perhaps.
Can you milk a cat? That's what I want to know.
Hashtag Greg Fokker. Those poor Fokkers.
Yeah. So, well, I think we can. Here, let me pull in some music, some transition. All right. Hopefully, everyone heard that like laser beam. So that's our transition to closing up. So we've been talking for some time now, and let's wrap this up. What do you think?
What do I think? I'm stoked that we're doing this. We live in the same town, everyone, but we live 50 something miles apart, just because that's the nature of how big Houston is. And
yeah,
so
hashtag Houston's huge.
Yeah, I do love doing this. I miss our hikes, and I'm glad we're gonna do them here. So I'm stoked.
Oh yeah, I like it. The virtual hike. We're not actually moving. We're not increasing our heart rate. Yeah, it's similar. I can see that.
Yeah, I'm just pelotoning.
Are you walking on a treadmill right now? I'll be very impressed if that's what you're doing.
I'm in a rocking chair, but no. That's the only thing I'm doing.
Well, all right. Well, hey, team and family out there, if you stuck with us this far, we appreciate you. We hope to bring you good content, value-added content, just a little part of who we are, trying to be authentic and real. And, we'll be excited once this kind of gets published and gets out there and we can start maybe interacting with some people. I don't know how many people are going to listen to it, a billion, or just maybe my wife and kids, maybe your kids or your family. I don't know. But maybe they can, ask a question or two and get us started. But no, in all seriousness, we're excited to do this. It's something we've been talking about for a bit. And we'll be excited to bring this to you week after week. We've committed to, is it 52?
52 episodes.
Yeah, I don't think this one counts. No,
this one definitely doesn't count. This just when our people find us and say, "Oh, these guys are okay," they'll come back to this episode and say, "Man, I think they were horrible in February of 2022. Good Lord."
Yeah, you never keep your first paintings. I learned that from an artist. He's like, you give it all away, but not to your family because you never want to see that nonsense again.
True story.
All right, well, let me roll us out here with some music, and this has been the episode of Deep Cut Chiefs, and we look forward to seeing you again. Peace
See you
out
out there.
I love the music.